Today, we're with Abubakar Sadiq Alhassan, a geopolitical and intelligence analyst based out of Nigeria. He specializes in Africa and the Middle East, and he's also the host and founder of Geopolitics with Abu. It's a platform he founded to foster basically discussions on African geopolitics and security. I've actually seen it pop up several times in my LinkedIn, so it's really interesting. Good insights. Abu Bakr, how are you today?
Fine, Mikhail. Thanks for inviting me to your show. I'm very, very happy to be here, and I hope I know we are gonna have a very, very broad and discussion and insight on Nigeria's geopolitics with its regional neighbors and internal security. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah. There's actually a lot going on right now in Nigeria. I have some things right here that I've taken down, and we kind of want you to walk us through it. You're the
So,
expert on the topic.
hello.
You're on the ground there.
Yeah.
What's going on right now in Nigeria? How's the security situation, the internal situation of Nigeria this past week, 2 weeks? What challenges are there?
Um. Well. Well. Yes. Our security challenges in Nigeria is very, very dynamic. It is not a static situation. In Nigeria, we have different regions in Nigeria. We have the south, we have the east, we have the west, and we have the north region. It's no secret that in our northern region, we've had the Boko Haram and ISWAP insurgency for years to go, and it goes back to governance issues that we've had and the region itself, the West African region itself. What's going on in Mali and Burkina Faso, Niger, and how it has trickled down to the Lake Chad region and in northern Nigeria as a consequence. We also have in the southeast, we have the Biafran agitation, which
Yeah.
has not completely gone by, but has been decimated to a certain extent. We still have, insurgents over there too, causing economic and security disruptions, and also, and that is that. So, but
Has it
Nigeria, yeah,
affected?
huh?
Has it affected bilateral relations? The activities, basically the militant activities in the north, for example, the security related. Has it affected bilateral relations with Chad or Niger? Because
Yeah,
on
of
at
course,
least
of course. I was gonna get to that. Of course,
yeah.
you are aware that ECOWAS has been split, for the past years, where we have the Central Sahel countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, leaving ECOWAS after military coup, and then forming their AES. But the events in Mali have proven that that has not paid off. That strategy have not paid off, and there is need for regional collaboration to tackle these resources. Talking about Chad, yes, Chad, we've had good relations with Chad. In fact, their president was in Abuja some few weeks ago to discuss regional
Wow.
cooperation after an attack on Lake Chad Island, which led to the Chadian authorities declaring state of emergency in the Lake Chad region.
Yeah.
Um, but in the case of the AES, that what's happening in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger has huge implications for coastal countries, of which Nigeria is one of the largest. We've already seen that the JNIM already shown that is the chief of, I don't know whether to call them terrorist organization or not.
Hmm.
But yeah, you can call them terrorist organizations, even though they've now evolved into what they call a governing structure.
Yeah.
With what we see going on in Mali, with the way we've seen them handling their situation in Mali. So, but we've seen them launch attacks in Nigeria, which means that they're already present in the coastal states, and they are spreading from the Sahel south
Sahel. Yeah.
southwards, yeah,
Southwards.
southwards to Nigeria, Benin Republic, Togo, and all that. And this is very, very alarming.
Wow.
So it in a way shapes Nigeria's the security problem shapes Nigeria's relationship with the region. For example, Nigeria and Benin we've seen closer security cooperation following the attacks in Kwara. And you know that Kwara in north central Nigeria
Yeah.
shares borders with Benin Republic and Niger State in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Gurgu region and all that, they share border with Benin Republic. So, which highlights the need for closer security cooperations within both countries. So, we've seen that also happening. We've seen that happening with Chad. And then Nigeria also sent ECOWAS representative to Mali to discuss ways that we can also cooperate
That was
following
recently, right?
yeah,
That was
recently following the attacks in Mali, the multiple attacks by the Tuareg ethnic nationalists,
yeah.
uh, and then the JNIM group that joined forces, and and right now they are laying siege, the JNIM laying siege to Bamako and trying to cut Bamako off from all economic activities. So yeah, the relationship with Nigeria and its neighbors is moving. It's not static. I know that
Dynamic.
sometimes you hear that there are some challenges here and there, but there are also areas of cooperations, especially security wise, that is going on. And then in the case of Nigeria, if you notice, there've been a lot of counterterrorism operations are going on in Nigeria right now, especially in the northern part. I think from my expert view, what Nigerian security forces are focusing on is cutting the supply chains of these insurgents.
Yeah.
For example, so most of them that are in the northeast, you try and cut their supply chains from Maiduguri axis to the rural areas to make sure that they don't get from Maiduguri to the rural areas and then to the
Yeah.
border areas. In fact, this is why Nigeria and Benin Republic are cooperating very well now, especially in the north central part of the country.
So now,
The aim
yeah,
is to cut the supply chain of this
supply chain. Yeah.
yeah, the supply chain where they transport weapons and all that. So
Uh-huh.
if you are reading the news recently, you will see that Nigerians have there've been a lot of Nigerian forces in the northeast arresting suppliers to Boko Haram, arresting residents
Yeah.
that are suspected or are proven to be giving information or supplying
Yeah.
weapons, supplying fuel, food, anything. By cutting those supply chains,
Yeah. No, so
you
sorry
weaken
to
them,
interrupt.
and then you isolate them and
Hmm.
make them ineffective. It's a more non-kinetic way of handling. And then if you notice too, a lot of kinetic activities, especially the Nigerian Air Force, they've been very very active. There've been a lot of counter-terrorist activities going on in the northeast, in the Yobe axis. Yes, I think yesterday or this morning, a group of ISWAP gathering was disrupted by the Nigerian Air Force in Yobe State,
Yeah.
northeastern Nigeria. So this is what we are seeing. We're seeing Nigeria adapting to the terrain, adapting to what the
And
insurgents have been up to. And
if I can interrupt you for a second, like these armed groups, basically Boko Haram or the Islamic State, for
I
example,
swap.
are they mainly, yeah, ISWAP, are they mainly in rural areas, or do they control mainly rural areas? Do they mainly control urban areas in the north, or is it just mixed? Does it
Yeah,
depend what side?
they are in control of remote areas. They govern
Remote
some of the
areas.
remote areas, the rural areas. Of course, how because of how big Nigeria is, it's not really easy to physically govern the whole space, which is why non-kinetic means too and developmental programs are needed to make sure that young people don't get indoctrinated into terrorist
Yeah.
ideology. So it's not easy to actually police the whole situation, the whole area. If you look at it very very closely. So, but they have ability also. We've seen in Maiduguri, in last month's Maiduguri attacks to attack urban centers like Maiduguri,
Hmm.
the capital of Borno State. They can launch surprise attacks and all that. I think this is the main reason why the Nigerian forces have been concentrated on cutting their supply chains to reduce their ability to launch these attacks in urban centers and also with reconnaissance activities to also make sure that they are targeting them and tracking their
Yeah.
movements
Because
and
this
all
has
that.
kind of changed, right? The strategy has kind of changed to non-kinetic now, because before there was a lot more kinetic, I think, involved, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the
Years ago,
strategy
even. It was a lot
it has
more
adapted to
kinetic,
the terrain.
direct clashes, using the military, deploying the military in,
Yeah,
different forces. Now the shifting to non-kinetic. Do you think
yeah.
this is having a positive impact on it? I mean, are they? Is the government able to contain, for example, the militant expansion
Well,
or growth?
I can say that it has positive impact in the sense that some non-kinetic strategies actually lead to the opposite of the intended plan. For example, the non-kinetic strategy of paying ransoms, like government facilitating or paying ransoms for
Yeah,
kidnapped citizens. They use that money to buy more weapons,
yeah,
to rejuvenate their fighters and take care of them and all that. So in that aspect, I disagree that the non-kinetic strategy is working. For example, if you notice, there were reports recently to integrate former Boko Haram members that surrendered into the society, and which drew some form of condemnations from all spheres of Nigerians as on social media.
yeah,
They feel like these people are responsible for the deaths of loved ones, and so they do not deserve to come back to the society or to be integrated. Also, people
yeah,
believe that once you're a terrorist, you're always a terrorist. So there's still a lot of questions about that. But in terms of cutting the supply chain routes and then working with regional, strengthening regional corporations, like we've seen with Chad and Benin Republic, but we have to be careful, because of the ethnic coloration. The
yeah.
Fulani group in West Africa, they've been sort of discriminated in, especially in Burkina Faso, in Mali, because of the history, of their
There's an
grievances.
overlap there of ethnic groups as well,
Yeah,
right?
there's an overlap there. And then this attack by Benin Republic and Nigerian forces in Kwara State targeted Fulani groups and drew some condemnations, because the Fulani
Fulani,
groups were
yeah,
accused,
yeah, yeah. I
the Fulani
remember
groups
that.
were accused of being informant to Boko Haram and JNIM
Yeah,
that are operating in the area. So we have to be very, very, very careful in ethnicizing
yeah.
counterterrorism and
To
all
be
that.
able to contain this, politically contain this. Now, I
Politically
have a
contain it.
question. Yeah, I have a question here because I remember back in late April at the Security Forum in Senegal, Mali's MFA, and I'm going to quote what he said. He said, quote unquote, there are neighboring countries currently harboring terrorist groups, all frequently receiving hostile forces that carry out operations against us. Those are the words by Mali's MFA that kind of represents his government. Was he
Mm.
referring to Nigeria? Are relations between Mali and Nigeria tense right now?
No, no, no. I think he was more referring to France,
To
not
France?
Nigeria. As you well know, like we do have diplomatic relationship with Mali, but it's not as strong as I would say that it's supposed to be, given the scale of the security crisis in their country, which can affect the whole region. But as you know, of the anti-French wave in the
Yeah,
Sahel,
yeah.
and all that. And then again, what is also driving this is the, about this attack. The funny thing about the attack in Mali, in Bamako, there was a French TV recently, and if that French TV, they quoted a statement saying that this attack on Mali was supported by Ukrainian forces,
I've
fighting
heard of that.
Russia.
Yeah, yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard of that.
fighting Russia, and then French forces,
Yeah.
that they joined forces and provided intelligence for the Tuareg rebels and JNIM to launch this attack, like to launch this multiple theater attack
Yeah.
on Mali
Because
recently. So yeah, so they've been,
Russia's Ru-
but I think it is established that we have Ukrainian legions that are trying to fight
yeah.
Russian forces in the Sahel.
The Wagner Group, for example, the
Yeah, Wagner
African
Group,
Corps.
Wagner Group in the Sahel.
I came across a post. It seemed credible to me, and it's possible as well. I couldn't verify it independently,
Yeah.
but it was a militant in Mali killed, and they found a patch in Ukrainian, one of the Ukrainian
In
far
fact,
right
if
patches
you
that
if you
had on
look
the
at the
guy.
attack in 2024, the attack that preceded this attack in Kidal, in the Kidal region, in 2024 there was an attack in the Kidal region, and then
Kidal, yeah.
about 2 days later there was also an attack on the Bamako International Airport. They were waving the Tuareg, not the terrorist, sorry. I have to be careful with the words. The Tuareg ethnic group that launched that attack against the Russian forces in the Kidal region. They were waving Ukrainian flags. Yes, they were waving Ukrainian flags. So yes, clandestine activities by foreign forces are going on in the Sahel. Not only in Israel, even in Nigeria, I must say, clandestine forces, clandestine activities in African countries is nothing new. And if you look at the social media, you will see that a lot of Nigerians are now aware of activities of foreign clandestine activities. Not only
That's
in
something
Nigeria,
that's going on as well. Then,
and then what is going on in Mali and Burkina Faso, and then with activities of foreign interest, in the gold and other mineral resources, is also a reason. But that is not to say that is the reason why the Malian forces have not been able to. They share the Malian regime share a big blame for not able to tame these terrorist activities. They've not taken the necessary political steps to make sure that the Tuareg, their grievances have been addressed. The Algeria Accord was unilaterally withdrew from it, which gives the Tuareg some sort of protection. And then the zero sum way which they've been administering the country, not bringing people together, but administering the country by force, is also playing a big role in uniting the populace against the regime too. So the Malian regime have played a very huge role in their wars, in their problems too. Suffice to say that they have played a very big role in their problems, and that is not only, even though the activities of foreign influences plays a huge role too. That does not mean that the Malian blames can be taken away.
Yeah. So you have Mali on one side, you have Chad on the other. How about Benin and Cameroon? Because Nigeria also has borders with Benin and Cameroon.
Yeah, they are coastal countries, and they are feeling the effects of this of the conflict in the Sahel. As you know, that the coastal country is the major price of this terrorist group, because once you are controlling the coastlines, or your ability to shape the economic situation along the coastlines, you get more. It's a very, very huge deal, considering how maritime security has become very important in today's geopolitics. So that's very, 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 very important. Benin Republic have been suffering from the spillover, especially in that what we call the three border area, Niger, Mali. That three border area goes straight to Benin Republic, Togo, Nigeria, and all that. It goes straight. So that's why what happened in Mali can make them is a very, very, very important thing, because it makes the roads straight from Mali to Nigeria through the northern region very, very, very.
It spills over really easily. Then it spills over really easily.
It makes it just a straight road through the Sahara, and then that is a problem not only for in terms of immigration for Europe. Also, that becomes a problem for Europe in terms of immigration and all that. So it's not only a regional problem. I think it's a global issue. For Benin Republic, they've taken steps to they are doubling down on their on programs to make sure that especially the youth in the northern region are not being easily manipulated by these terrorist forces and terrorists and all that, and they are cooperating with Nigeria and other forces too to make sure that the terrorist activities in their northern region is being carefully managed. Same with Togo, and then you are also seeing this thing spreading to the Mediterranean, to what's the name of this country again? Mauritania, and Senegal,
Morocco, Algeria,
and Morocco too, and all that. So it's becoming a form of global hotspots now.
And how about the maritime, the Gulf, for example? I mean, Gulf of Guinea is not exactly in that area, but for example, the coastal waters of Nigeria, for example.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a security problem with ships there? Or is there any piracy going on? Has there been any major changes there? Or?
I think the piracy thing is, you have to be very, very careful, because the piracy thing is yes, there's piracy. There can be some form of piracy, but I don't think it leads to the fact that there are terrorist activities are going on in that region. Piracy has always existed there, anyways. But I think Nigeria, for example, have really done some activity. For example, you hear about the Deep Sea Blue project, a project to make sure that navigational freedom in the maritime Gulf of Guinea, and then that program led to drop of at least 90% in maritime piracy incidents in drop of Guinea, even though it rises from time to time. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I think we when it comes to maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea, we should look past the piracy incidents, and we should look at the paperwork. You know, there are
Yeah.
ways that you can infiltrate this by paperwork, form
Yeah.
of corruption, and other things. That
Yeah.
way, it goes through. Is you structuralize
It's land-based
uh,
as well. I mean,
illicit
whatever happens
activity.
on
Yeah,
land, that's what,
yeah. So
you
you
have to look at
structuralize
the
illicit
causes of
activity,
piracy
and
on
then
land
drugs that are
because
coming
it
from,
eventually
and then
comes out from
drugs.
there.
Yeah. You are right. And then drugs that are coming from South America passes through easily to the Sahel and all
Uh-huh.
that because of the
Yeah.
documentations, and then the illicit documentations, corruption that is going on the ground. So I think we should focus on also that too, to understand, to have a picture of what is going on in terms of maritime activities in the Gulf of Guinea. I think that's a
Yeah.
better way to look at what is going on in the Gulf of, because a lot of drug busting happens in the region, especially in the western coast of Africa, that we see that it
Yeah.
happens in Senegal. We see it in Ghana, where a large shipment of drug busts from South America, passing Africa through Europe or Asia or East Africa.
Yeah.
If you notice, I did a podcast with my former colleague Dolores. We were
Yeah.
where
Yeah. I remember that. I remember
yeah,
that
where we
one.
spoke about this in detail.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to the paperwork, like which officials are cooperating with these
Hmm.
drug cartels in making sure
Yeah.
that these drugs are flowing in the
That's
maritime
a big
corridors.
topic. Yeah, that's a huge
Yeah, that's a
topic
big
as
topic in
well.
the
I
maritime
think
corridors.
we're actually kind of running out of time here.
Okay,
I want to thank you for being with us, actually, for being on the program today.
no problem, no problem.
I'm sure we'll see you again. And just as a reminder, we had Abubakar Sadiq Alhassan. He's
Yeah,
a geopolitical and intelligence analyst based out of Nigeria, Abuja, it seems like, right? And
yeah,
he specializes in Africa, Middle East. And again, he's the founder and he heads Geopolitics with Abu, which is a
yeah.
platform that also does interviews, studies, and discusses African geopolitics and security. Um, Abu Bakr, thanks for being with us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mikhail. Thank